Maya Clark sat in the back row of the advanced xenobiology classroom, trying to make herself as small as possible. The chair was too big for her human frame, designed for the larger alien students that filled most of the seats. Around her, creatures from dozens of different worlds chatted in their various languages, creating a symphony of clicks, buzzes, and electronic sounds. Professor Vextar slithered to the front of the class, his 8 tentacles moving in perfect coordination. The Zilonian was considered one of the brightest minds in the galaxy, with a brain that could process information faster than most computers. His pale blue skin rippled as he began the lesson. Today we will study primitive survival adaptations, Professor Vexatar announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been questioned. We will examine how lesser species compensate for their obvious weaknesses through crude methods. Maya felt her stomach drop. She knew what was coming next. Let us begin with the most recent example, the professor continued, pulling up a holographic image of a human. The species known as humans from the planet Earth. Notice their soft skin, lacking any natural armor. Their weak bones that break easily. Their simple brain structure that processes information at laughably slow speeds. Krex, a massive Thurian student sitting 3 rows ahead, turned around and grinned at Maya. His reptilian face was covered in thick scales that could stop most weapons. Hey, Softshell, he called out loudly. How does it feel being the class example of evolutionary failure? Several other students laughed. Zara Volt, whose energy-based form flickered with amusement, added her own comment. I heard humans can't even communicate properly. They have to use sound waves instead of direct mind contact. How primitive. Maya touched the small bandage on her left palm and said nothing. She had learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse. The other students saw any response as proof that humans were emotional and unstable. Professor Vextar seemed to enjoy the attention his lesson was getting. Indeed, humans are fascinating in their limitations. They cannot survive in most environments. Without artificial assistance, they require constant consumption of organic matter to maintain energy. Their lifespans are incredibly short compared to most civilized species. They're like pets, laughed another student, a crystalline being, whose voice sounded like breaking glass. Cute but useless. However, Professor Vextar continued, humans do demonstrate one interesting trait. They have developed what they call technology to compensate for their biological failures. Crude mechanical devices that perform functions their bodies cannot. Maya watched as the hologram showed human tools and machines. To the aliens in the class, human technology looked simple and clumsy compared to their natural abilities. Why build a weapon when you could shoot energy from your body? Why create a computer when your brain could already process data faster? Their most amusing trait, Professor Vextar said with what passed for a smile on his alien face, is their belief that they are somehow special. Despite being physically weak, mentally slow, and technologically primitive, humans often display what they call confidence. It is quite entertaining. Krex stood up and flexed his massive arms. I could crush 100 humans without even trying, he boasted. Their bones are made of the same stuff as those breakable sticks they call wood. And their minds are so simple, added Zaravolt. I once scanned a human's thoughts. It was like looking into a shallow puddle compared to the ocean of an Altarian consciousness. Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she kept her expression calm. Her fingers traced the edge of the bandage on her palm. The covering was small, just a simple white patch that most people assumed was hiding a minor cut or scrape. Now then, Professor Vextar announced, for our practical demonstration we will examine how different species have evolved superior adaptations. Who would like to volunteer to show their natural abilities? Hands, claws, and tentacles shot up around the room. The alien students were eager to show off their superior genetics. Excellent, the professor said. Krex, please demonstrate Thurian physical superiority. The massive reptilian student walked to the front of the class and picked up a metal bar. That was meant to test grip strength. His clawed hands closed around it and the metal crumpled like paper. The other students cheered. Remarkable, Professor Vextar noted. Thurian bone density is 50 times that of a human. Their muscle fibers are woven with metallic compounds. A human attempting the same task would break every bone in their hand. Next, Zara Volt flowed forward in her energy form. She touched the classroom's computer system and instantly downloaded every file in its memory. Altarian neural networks can process information at light speed, she explained. A human brain would take years to learn what I just absorbed in seconds. One by one, the alien students demonstrated their natural gifts. Enhanced senses that could detect life from miles away, skin that could survive in the vacuum of space, minds that could calculate complex mathematics instantly. Maya watched it all, still touching her bandage. She had seen these displays many times before. Every class seemed to turn into a demonstration of why humans didn't belong at the Galactic Academy. And what about our human representative? Professor Vextar asked, his multiple eyes focusing on Maya. Would you care to show us what special adaptation humans possess? The classroom fell silent. Every alien eye, sensor, and optical organ turned toward Maya. She could feel their amusement, their curiosity about what the weak little human might try to do. Maya stood up slowly. Her heart was beating fast, but her hands were steady. She walked to the front of the class, her soft shoes making no sound on the metal floor. Well? Professor Vextar prompted. What amazing human ability will you demonstrate? Perhaps the famous human skill of making excuses? The class erupted in laughter. Krex was practically howling with amusement. Maya looked out at all the alien faces staring at her. Then she reached for the bandage on her palm. I guess, she said quietly. You could say humans are good at surprising people. She began to peel back the corner of the white covering. Professor Vextar leaned forward, expecting to see some pathetic wound that the human was about to claim represented their species' resilience. Instead, as the bandage came away, something else was revealed, something that made the laughter die. In the throats of every creature in the room, the mark on Maya's palm began to glow. The glow from Maya's palm cast strange shadows across the classroom. The mark was unlike anything the alien students had ever seen. It looked like a complex symbol that seemed to shift and change as they watched, with lines that moved like living things beneath her skin. Professor Vextar's 8 tentacles froze in mid-motion. His pale blue skin turned an even lighter shade as recognition flickered in his multiple eyes. But he quickly shook his head, as if dismissing an impossible thought. Some kind of human tattoo, he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Crude body modification is common among primitive species. Krex leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over Maya. What's that supposed to be, soft shell? Some kind of human war paint? Maya looked down at the mark on her palm. The symbol was about 2 inches across, with intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with their own internal light. She had kept it covered for months following her father's strict instructions, but today something felt different. It's not a tattoo, Maya said quietly. And it's not war paint. Zara Volt's energy form flickered with curiosity. Then what is it? Some kind of primitive human technology implanted under your skin? Why don't you find out? Maya challenged, surprising herself with her boldness. The classroom fell silent again. No human had ever challenged an alien student before. It simply wasn't done. Humans were at the academy on probation, grateful to be allowed to learn alongside their genetic superiors. Professor Vextar's tentacles twitched with what might have been amusement. Are you suggesting a formal demonstration, Miss Clark? A test of abilities? Maya felt her heart pounding, but she nodded. Yes, a test. This should be entertaining, Krex rumbled. What do you propose, human? A strength contest? An intelligence test? You'll lose either way. All of the above, Maya said, walking toward the testing area at the front of the classroom. Physical challenges, mental puzzles, survival scenarios, whatever you want to throw at me. The alien students began chattering excitedly among themselves. This was unprecedented. A human actually volunteering to be humiliated in front of the entire class. Very well, Professor Vextar said, his scientific curiosity overcoming his skepticism. We shall conduct a formal species comparison test. Class, please gather around the demonstration area. The students eagerly moved forward as Professor Vextar activated the room's testing equipment. Holographic displays showed various challenges: puzzle matrices for intelligence testing, strength measurement devices, and survival scenario simulators. "We shall begin with physical capabilities," the professor announced. "Krex, please demonstrate Thurian strength." The massive reptilian student approached the strength tester, a device that measured both grip force and lifting capacity. Krex wrapped his clawed hands around the grip sensors, and the display immediately showed numbers that made the other students gasp in admiration. He lifted the weighted bar with ease, the readings climbing to levels that would crush most materials. "Impressive," Professor Vextar noted. "Now for speed and reflexes." Krex moved through an obstacle course that tested reaction time and agility. Despite his size, he moved with surprising grace, his thick scales protecting him from impacts that would injure other species. "Excellent. Miss Volt, please demonstrate Altarian mental capabilities." Zara Volt approached the intelligence testing station. Complex mathematical equations, logic puzzles, and pattern recognition tests appeared on the holographic displays. Her energy form pulsed as she processed information at incredible speed, solving problems that would take most beings hours to complete. "Remarkable as always," the professor said. "Processing speed nearly 1,000 times faster than baseline. Organic intelligence." One by one, the other alien students took their turns. Each demonstration showcased abilities that seemed impossible by human standards: enhanced senses that could detect molecular compositions, natural armor that could withstand weapons fire, telepathic abilities that allowed instant communication across vast distances. Finally, all eyes turned to Maya. She stood at the edge of the testing area, the mark on her palm glowing brighter than before. "Your turn, soft shell," Krex said with a grin. "Try not to break anything. Oh wait, you probably will anyway." Maya approached the strength tester. She placed her hands on the grip sensors, and immediately something strange happened. The device, which had been showing normal readings moments before, began to flicker. The displays showed error messages, then went blank, then started showing numbers that climbed far beyond anything they had recorded before. "Malfunction," Professor Vextar muttered, moving to check the equipment. The sensors must be damaged. But Maya had already moved to the intelligence testing station. As soon as her marked hand touched the control panel, the holographic puzzles began solving themselves. Complex equations unraveled instantly. Pattern recognition tests completed before they fully loaded. "This is impossible," whispered one of the crystalline students. "The equipment is malfunctioning." Maya looked at Professor Vexitar, whose multiple eyes were wide with confusion and something that might have been fear. "It's not malfunctioning," Maya said. "Your equipment just isn't designed to measure what I am." She walked toward the academy's central testing console, an ancient piece of technology that had been part of the station since its construction. Most students assumed it was just decorative, too old to function properly. As Maya approached the console, something extraordinary happened. Lights that had been dark for centuries began to flicker to life. Displays that no one remembered how to operate started showing incomprehensible symbols and readings. Maya placed her marked palm flat against the central control surface. The entire academy shuddered. Emergency lights activated throughout the station. Computer systems that had been running on backup power suddenly surged to full capacity. In the depths of the academy, machinery that had slept for millennia began to hum with renewed life. Professor Vexistar staggered backward, his tentacles writhing in agitation. "What have you done?" he gasped. But Maya was no longer listening to him. As her hand remained in contact with the ancient console, information began flooding into her mind. Technical specifications for technologies beyond current understanding. Star charts showing regions of space that no modern species had ever mapped. Most importantly, the truth about what the mark on her palm really meant. She was not just human. She was something much, much more. The other students stood frozen in shock as the Academy's ancient systems continued to awaken around them. Whatever Maya had just activated, it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. In the distance, alarms began to sound as the station's command center detected the massive energy surge. Soon, very important people would be asking very difficult questions. But for now, Maya simply stood with her hand on the console, learning secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. The ancient console continued to pulse with energy as Maya kept her hand pressed against its surface. Information flowed through her mind like a river of light, showing her things that no living being had seen for millions of years. Around her, the alien students stood in stunned silence, their mockery forgotten in the face of something they couldn't understand. Professor Vextar was the first to recover from his shock. His tentacles trembled as he approached the console, careful not to get too close to Maya or the strange energy surrounding her. "This cannot be," he whispered, his multiple eyes fixed on the glowing symbols that now covered every display in the room. "These are predecessor markings, but the predecessors vanished eons ago." At the mention of that name, several of the older students gasped. Even Krex, who had never shown respect for anything, took a step backward. "Predecessors?" asked one of the younger students, an insectoid creature whose translator struggled with the concept. "Who are the predecessors?" Professor Vextar's skin had turned almost white with fear and awe. The predecessors were the first civilization to achieve true galactic dominance. They existed millions of years before any of our current species evolved. Their technology was so advanced that we still cannot understand how it worked. Maya felt the information continuing to flow into her mind. She saw vast cities that spanned entire planets, starships that could travel between galaxies in the blink of an eye, and technologies that could reshape matter at the atomic level. But more than that, she saw the truth about what had happened to these ancient beings. "They didn't vanish," Maya said, her voice carrying a strange new authority. "They evolved beyond the need for physical form. But before they left, they planted seeds." "Seeds?" Zaravolt's energy form flickered nervously. "What kind of seeds?" Maya finally lifted her hand from the console, though the ancient systems continued to hum with power around them. The mark on her palm was now clearly visible to everyone, its complex patterns shifting and changing like living circuitry. "Genetic seeds," Maya explained. "Hidden in the DNA of primitive species across the galaxy, dormant until the time was right." Professor Vextar's scientific mind struggled to accept what he was seeing. "You're suggesting that humans carry predecessor genetic material? That's impossible. Humans are one of the youngest species in the galaxy." "No," Maya said, shaking her head. "Humans are one of the oldest. We're not a young species that recently achieved space travel. We're the descendants of predecessor colonies, genetically modified to survive on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds." The information continued to unlock in her mind, revealing the truth about Earth and humanity's real history. Long ago, when the predecessors realized they were evolving beyond physical existence, they had chosen certain worlds to serve as genetic repositories. Earth was one of those worlds, specifically selected because its harsh and changing environment would force rapid adaptation. "The predecessors didn't want their legacy to die with them," Maya continued, "so they created us. Humans weren't meant to be the strongest or the fastest or the smartest. We were meant to be survivors, adaptable, stubborn, capable of thriving in any environment." Krex found his voice, though it was much quieter than before. "But humans are weak. Your bones break, your skin tears, your minds process information slowly." Maya smiled, and for the first time since entering the academy, it was a confident smile. "That's what we wanted you to think. Human weaknesses are actually strengths. Our bones break instead of shattering completely, then heal stronger than before. Our skin is sensitive because it can detect threats that your armored hide would miss. Our minds process information slowly because we're designed to think creatively, not just calculate." She gestured to the ancient technology still humming around them. "Every piece of predecessor technology responds to genetic markers. Weapons, ships, planetary defense systems. For millions of years they've been waiting for their inheritors to return." Professor Vextar was frantically checking his data tablets, cross-referencing historical records with what Maya was telling them. "The timing matches," he muttered. "Human emergence in the galaxy coincides with increased activity from dormant predecessor sites." "But there are billions of humans," protested another student. "If you all carry this genetic legacy, Why haven't your people conquered the galaxy? Because most humans don't know what they are, Maya replied. The genetic markers are dormant in most of the population. Only a small percentage ever fully activate, and those who do are taught to hide it. As if summoned by her words, the classroom door burst open. Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Defense Force strode in, followed by Dr. Lisa Grant, a xenobiology researcher that Maya recognized from Earth News broadcasts. Maya, Commander Morrison said urgently, we felt the predecessor systems activate from 3 sectors away. You need to shut this down before... He stopped mid-sentence as he saw the alien students staring at them with a mixture of fear and awe. Too late, Dr. Grant observed. The secret's out. Professor Vextar turned to face the humans, his tentacles coiling defensively. You knew. Your species has known about this genetic legacy all along, Commander Morrison sighed. Not all of us. It's classified information. We only tell humans when their markers activate, and then only if they can handle the responsibility. Responsibility? Krex asked, confused. Dr. Grant stepped forward, her expression serious. Predecessor technology is incredibly powerful. Their weapons could destroy star systems. Their defensive systems could make a planet completely invulnerable. In the wrong hands, this technology could end galactic civilization. Maya felt the weight of that responsibility settling on her shoulders. The information flowing through her mind included access codes for weapons that could crack planets in half, defensive barriers that could stop entire fleets, and terraforming systems that could reshape worlds in days instead of centuries. This is why humans seem primitive, she realized aloud. You're deliberately holding back your technology. Commander Morrison nodded. We could have swept across the galaxy centuries ago. Our ships could outrun anything you've built. Our weapons could pierce any defense. But the predecessors left. Us with more than just technology. They left us with wisdom. Power without restraint leads to destruction. Zara Volt's energy form was pulsing rapidly, a sign of deep thought among her people. So when humans joined the galactic community, we were returning home, Maya finished, coming back to claim our inheritance. But only when we were ready to use it responsibly. The alien students looked at each other with dawning understanding. Every human they had dismissed as weak and primitive was potentially carrying the genetic legacy of the galaxy's most powerful civilization. Professor Vextar straightened his posture, his attitude toward Maya completely transformed. Miss Clark, I owe you an apology, we all do. But Maya was already shaking her head. No apologies needed. You couldn't have known. And honestly, I didn't know either until a few minutes ago. She looked around at her classmates, seeing them with new eyes. The predecessors taught us that true strength comes from cooperation, not domination. They could have ruled the galaxy forever, but instead they chose to evolve beyond the need for power. The mark on her palm pulsed once more, then gradually dimmed to a soft glow. Around them, the ancient system settled into a steady hum, ready to serve but no longer demanding attention. So what happens now? Asked the crystalline student who had called humans pets just minutes earlier. Maya looked at Commander Morrison and Dr. Grant, then back at her classmates. Now we learn from each other. Humans have a lot to teach about predecessor technology, but we also have a lot to learn about cooperation with other species. The future had just become much more complicated, but also much more promising. The Academy's conference room buzzed with tension as representatives from major galactic powers gathered for an emergency session. News of Maya's demonstration had spread quickly through official channels, and within hours, diplomats, military, leaders, and scientists from dozens of species had arrived at Nexus Prime. Maya sat at the center of the large oval table, feeling smaller than ever despite the revelation of her genetic heritage. Around her, alien dignitaries whispered in their native languages, their translators working overtime to keep up with the rapid conversations. Commander Morrison stood at the head of the table, a holographic display showing star charts and historical data behind him. Dr. Grant sat nearby, her tablet filled with genetic analysis reports that she had been working on since arriving at the Academy. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings, Commander Morrison began. I know this situation has raised many questions about humanity's place in the galactic community. I'm here to provide answers. Fleet Admiral Korthak of the Zilonian Empire leaned forward, his tentacles writhing with agitation. Commander Morrison, are you telling us that humans have been deliberately deceiving the galaxy about their true capabilities? Not deceiving, Morrison replied carefully. Withholding information for the safety of everyone involved. A crystalline representative from the Shattered Worlds Coalition spoke up, her voice like breaking glass. Safety? Your species has access to predecessor technology, the most powerful force the galaxy has ever known, and you speak of safety? Dr. Grant activated her own holographic display, showing genetic analysis charts and historical timelines. The truth is more complex than you might think. Yes, a small percentage of humans carry dormant predecessor genetic markers, but most humans live their entire lives without ever activating these abilities. How small a percentage? Demanded General Vexitar, who had arrived shortly after his brother Professor Vexitar had reported the classroom incident. Approximately 1 in 10,000 humans will ever experience a full activation like Maya's, Dr. Grant explained. 1 in 1,000 might show minor abilities. The vast majority of humanity has no idea this genetic legacy even exists. Maya found her voice, though it felt strange to be addressing such powerful figures. I didn't know either until today. My parents told me the mark was just a birthmark. They said to keep it covered because some people might react badly to unusual markings. Your parents knew? Asked Ambassador Threlcat of the Hive Confederation, her insectoid form clicking with curiosity. Only after it started glowing when I turned 18, Maya admitted. That's when my father finally explained what it meant. But even then, he didn't tell me everything. Commander Morrison nodded grimly. We've learned to be very careful about how much information we share, and when. Predecessor technology is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly dangerous. He activated a new section of his display, showing images of destroyed worlds and dead star systems. These are the remains of civilizations that found predecessor artifacts but weren't ready for them. Entire species wiped out by weapons they couldn't control. Planets turned into lifeless husks by terraforming technology gone wrong. The alien representatives studied the images with growing unease. The destruction shown was on a scale that none of their civilizations could achieve, even working together. The predecessors didn't vanish because they were destroyed, Dr. Grant continued. They evolved beyond physical form because they realized that ultimate power corrupts ultimately. Before they ascended, they scattered their technology across the galaxy and locked it behind genetic keys. Keys that only humans possess, General Vexitar observed. Not just humans, Maya said, surprising everyone in the room. The information I received shows that several species carry different types of predecessor markers. Humans got the warrior survivor legacy, but there are others. This revelation caused an uproar among the representatives. Species that had considered themselves genetically superior suddenly wondered if they might be carrying hidden legacies of their own. Commander Morrison raised his hand for silence. This is why we've been cautious. Imagine if every species learned they had access to world-destroying weapons. The galaxy would tear itself apart in a matter of years. Ambassador Threlcat's compound eyes focused on Maya. But why reveal the truth now? What has changed? Maya looked around the table at all the alien faces staring at her. Some showed fear, others curiosity, and a few showed what might have been respect. Because hiding it isn't working anymore, she said finally. More humans are activating every year. Predecessor sites across the galaxy are responding to our presence and treating humans like primitives while we secretly guard the galaxy's most powerful technology isn't sustainable. Guard the galaxy? Fleet Admiral Korthak's voice carried skepticism. You expect us to believe that humans have been protecting us? Dr. Grant pulled up another display, this one showing incident reports from across human space. Every year, treasure hunters and archaeologists discover predecessor sites. Every year, we have to quietly intervene before they can activate technologies they don't understand. We've prevented 17 potential galactic catastrophes in the last decade alone. The predecessor defense grid around the galactic core, Commander Morrison added. It's been active for the past 50 years, protecting everyone from the dark matter entities that emerge from the galactic center. Guess who's been maintaining it? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Many of the representatives had wondered why the mysterious threats from the galactic core had become less frequent in recent decades. Maya felt the mark on her palm grow warm as she accessed more of the information flowing through her mind. There's something else you need to know. The predecessors didn't just leave behind technology. They left behind warnings. Warnings about what? Asked the crystalline representative. Something is coming, Maya said, her voice growing more urgent as the ancient knowledge revealed itself. A force from outside our galaxy. The predecessors evolved beyond physical form partly to escape it, but they knew it would eventually follow their trail here. Commander Morrison's expression grew grim. This is classified information at the highest levels, but given today's revelations, I think everyone deserves to know. Our deep space monitoring stations have been detecting anomalous readings from the galactic edge for the past 5 years. You think this outside force is already approaching? General Vextar asked. We think it's already here, Dr. Grant said, quietly. Small scout forces testing our defenses, learning our capabilities. The predecessor defense systems have been engaging them automatically, but they're learning to adapt. Maya stood up, feeling the weight of her genetic legacy settling fully onto her shoulders. This is why the predecessors created us. Not to rule the galaxy, but to protect it. They knew that eventually their children would need to stand together against something bigger than any single species could handle. She looked around the table at all the representatives. We can't do this alone. Humans might have access to predecessor technology, but we need everyone's cooperation to use it effectively. Ambassador Threlcat was the first to respond. What do you need from us? Trust, Maya said simply, and cooperation. The predecessors designed their technology to work best when different species work together. Our weapons are more effective when guided by Altarian minds. Our defensive systems function better when maintained by Thurian strength. Our ships fly faster when powered by crystalline energy matrices. Commander Morrison smiled for the first time since the meeting began. The galaxy is stronger when we work together. That's the real lesson the predecessors left behind. The alien representatives looked at each other, decades of mistrust and competition suddenly seeming much less important in the face of an external threat. General Vextar spoke for many of them when he said, "What do you need us to do?" Maya felt the mark on her palm pulse with approval. First, we need to stop pretending that any species is superior to the others. Then, we need to start preparing for war. 6 months after the revelation in Professor Vextar's classroom, the Galactic Academy had transformed into something unrecognizable. Where once species-segregated seating had divided students by their genetic superiority, mixed groups now worked together on projects that would have been impossible before. Maya walked through the corridors, still amazed by how much had changed. The mark on her palm had faded to a barely visible glow, but its presence was a constant reminder of the responsibility she now carried. Students who had once mocked her now sought her guidance, not because they feared her power, but because they respected her wisdom. "Maya," called a familiar voice. She turned to see Krex jogging toward her, his massive Thurian frame moving with surprising grace. The reptilian student who had once called her soft shell was now one of her closest friends. "How did the engineering test go?" Maya asked as Krex fell into step beside her. "Better than expected," Krex replied with a grin that showed far too many sharp teeth. "Turns out Thurian bone density makes us excellent at handling predecessor power cores. Who knew that being thick-skulled would be an advantage?" They were heading toward the Academy's new Integrated Species Laboratory, where Professor Vextar now taught combined classes that focused on how different species could work together, rather than compete against each other. Inside the lab, Zara Volt was working with a team of mixed species on a project that would have been impossible just months earlier. Her energy-based form interfaced directly with a predecessor computer system, while a crystalline student provided power regulation and a human technician monitored safety protocols. "Any progress on the communication array?" Maya asked as she approached their workstation. Zara Volt's form pulsed with excitement. "We've managed to establish contact with 3 more predecessor defense stations. They've been automated for millennia, but they're still functional. With the right genetic authorization codes, we could bring them online." Dr. Grant looked up from her monitoring station. "The question is whether we want to. Each defense station has enough firepower to sterilize a solar system. We need to be absolutely certain we can control them." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of the decision. Over the past months, she had learned to access more of her predecessor legacy, but with each new ability came greater responsibility. The ancient knowledge showed her wonders beyond imagination and horrors beyond description. "Speaking of control," Commander Morrison said as he entered the lab, "we've received another communication from the Outer Rim monitoring stations. The anomalous readings are getting stronger." The lab fell silent. Everyone knew what those readings meant. The external threat that the predecessors had warned about was getting closer to the galactic core. "How much time do we have?" asked Professor Vextar, his tentacles coiling with nervous energy. "Our best estimates suggest 6 months before the first major incursion," Morrison replied. "Maybe less if they decide to accelerate their timeline." Maya felt the familiar tingle in her palm as predecessor knowledge activated automatically. Images flashed through her mind. Massive ships that existed partially outside normal space, creatures that fed on the life force of entire worlds, and weapons that could unravel the fundamental forces that held matter together. "They're called the Devourers," Maya said, her voice distant as she processed the ancient memories. "The predecessors fought them once, long ago. It was a war that lasted for millions of years and nearly destroyed both civilizations." "How did the predecessors win?" Krex asked. "They didn't," Maya replied grimly. "Not really. The predecessors evolved beyond physical form partly to escape them, but they knew the Devourers would eventually follow their trail to this galaxy." Zara Volt's energy form flickered with concern. "So we're facing an enemy that defeated the most powerful civilization the galaxy has ever known?" "No," Maya said, straightening with new determination. "We're facing an enemy that caused the most powerful civilization to evolve beyond the need for physical conflict. The predecessors didn't lose. They found a better way to win." Dr. Grant leaned forward with interest. "What do you mean?" Maya walked to the central display and activated it with her marked palm. Holographic images filled the lab, showing the integrated defense networks that were now coming online across the galaxy. The predecessors realized that victory through force alone was impossible. The Devourers adapt to any weapon, learn from any defeat, and grow stronger with each battle. So the predecessors created something the Devourers had never encountered before. "What?" several voices asked at once. "Unity," Maya replied simply. "A galaxy where different species work together instead of against each other, where strength comes from cooperation rather than domination. The Devourers understand conquest, but they don't understand cooperation." Commander Morrison smiled as understanding dawned on his face. "That's why predecessor technology works better when different species operate it together." "Exactly," Maya confirmed. "Every defensive system, every weapon, every ship they left behind is designed to require cooperation between multiple species. They were building an alliance that could stand against the Devourers." Over the following weeks, the Academy became the center of a galactic transformation. Species that had viewed each other as competitors or threats began working together in ways that had seemed impossible just months earlier. Thurian engineers worked alongside human technicians to build ships that combined brute strength with subtle innovation. Altarian energy manipulation was paired with crystalline power regulation to create defensive systems of unprecedented effectiveness. Even the Insectoid Hive Confederation contributed their collective consciousness abilities to coordinate fleet movements across vast distances. Maya found herself at the center of it all, not as a leader, but as a bridge between species. Her predecessor legacy allowed her to understand how each piece of the alliance fit together, while her human perspective helped her see solutions that pure logic might miss. You know, Krex said one day, as they watched a mixed-species crew successfully activate an ancient predecessor battleship, I owe you an apology. For what? Maya asked, though she suspected she knew. For thinking humans were weak. For thinking strength was just about how hard you could hit or how fast you could calculate. Turns out the real strength is knowing when not to hit at all. Maya smiled. You're not the only one who learned something. I spent so long thinking I had to prove myself that I almost forgot the most important lesson. Which is? That being, different isn't a weakness, it's what makes us stronger together. As they spoke, alerts began flashing throughout the academy. The Outer Rim monitoring stations were detecting massive energy signatures approaching the galactic edge. The Devourers had arrived in force, but for the first time in galactic history they would face not a collection of competing species, but a true alliance. An alliance that had been built not through conquest or dominance, but through understanding and cooperation. Maya felt the mark on her palm pulse with warm approval. Somewhere beyond physical form, the predecessors were watching. Their children prepare for the greatest test the galaxy had ever faced. The real war was about to begin, but Maya was no longer afraid. She had learned the most important lesson the predecessors had left behind, that true strength came not from standing alone, but from standing together. The mockery that had once hurt her seemed like a distant memory now. She had found her place in the galaxy, not as a representative of human superiority, but as a bridge between all the species that called this galaxy home. And together, they would face whatever came from the darkness between the stars.